That's right. We're going live. And good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear me. I know there's a delay. We got all of our, well, not all of our friends, but a lot of our friends are here. And on this fine fall Saturday night, not far from, well, Halloween's coming up, isn't it? So how is everybody?
Boom.
Good.
Merry Christmas, Joe.
Merry Christmas. Yeah, it's on the way. At least the nightmare before Christmas, right? So I want to welcome you all to BDLL. We're gonna have a talk around the virtual water cooler. Anything that's Linux, tech, open source related, anything is on the table for discussion. We do have some things in the docket, but first I want to thank Rocco for starting the BDLL community, where I got to meet and hang out with some of the coolest e-friends I've ever made. So how is everybody? What's been going on in Linux? Yep. So right before the stream started, we were having some audio issues. Not me this time, which is very strange because usually I'm always like trying to fix something here because, you know, I got echoes and weirdness. But Jinda, I said, Jinda, you're too quiet. And then I screwed everything up, which is why we started just a few minutes late because of me. So I'm still at fault here.
My fault.
Well, whatever. So I'm curious. So what happened was Jinda was quiet. He turned up the volume and then he was overdriving. And now he's got it all settled out. The levels look good, at least according to the VU meter. I don't know how it works out for everybody on the other end. But I'm curious to know, what did you do? What was the failure mode, and what was your remedy to fix that?
Failure mode was to turn the volume up, and turning it back down didn't go back to where it was. And I don't understand why. So I had to go into Zoom, and I went into Zoom, and it has automatically level the sound volumes. Mm-hmm. Once I clicked that, and talked again, it was horrible. But once I unclicked it, it fixed something to do with it. And I think
it's a Zoom problem.
Yes, it definitely is a Zoom issue. And I have an IQ of a peanut, probably didn't help either. But we won't go there.
So just so you know, people can know this. So if they do have problem with Zoom, because it's more, I think people use Zoom for more than just BDLL. I think, don't quote me on that, but no. I'm quite certain that there are other uses of Zoom. And so should you have issues with Zoom, check your automatic volume, and then, so you may have to toggle it a couple times, and then check your system volumes, your mic inputs, to make sure they're not overdriven and so forth. So there we go. And then also on the subject of audio in the wide world of Linux sports, there was Thomas who was swapping out Pulse Audio for Pipewire on a what? So you started talking about it, and I stopped you because that's discussion for now. I mean, I don't know why you mess up the content of the show before the show.
Well, I was doing it on a pre-release version of Drugger OS. The next version, Drugger OS 7.6. I've had a lot of people asking me that the next version use Pipewire instead of Pulse for various different reasons. So I was giving it a shot just to see what switching it out would be like. And it's literally just installing a set of packages and uninstalling Pulse. That's all it is. And then you just log out, log back in, maybe reboot, and it just works. It works fine. I don't know what the audio quality is like because despite having halfway decent headphones, yes, these are 3D printed. Despite having halfway decent headphones, I am not an audiophile in the slightest. So our audiophiles in chat, I know Scrapjaw would probably qualify as one. You know, probably a safe bet. If we can get some people, you know, who are audiophiles actually giving it a listen on better headphones and better hardware than what Moi has, and you know, giving us an idea of what audio quality is versus Pulse, I think that would be great for those of us who might actually want to switch to it full time. You're definitely going to want something that is Ubuntu 2110 based or higher if you're on Ubuntu. I don't know about Debian base. I think you should be able to do it on Debian 11 or newer.
Yeah, I just checked all the packages are in the repo for that. I mean, there's Pipewire
you
Test,
need-
Pipewire Doc, Pipewire Bin, Pipewire Auto Client Libraries, Pipewire Stable. You got a ton of them in there. I don't know which one to download.
So the packages you need are Pipewire, Pipewire Audio Client Libraries,
Okay.
Pipewire Bin, Pipewire Media Session, and Pipewire Pulse. Those are the 5 that you need. There's also a Pipewire Doc if you want to learn a little bit more about it and see some examples.
Yeah, I have that.
But that's more optional. But those are the 5 you
Download,
need.
Everything's got Pipewire in it.
So regular contributor to Biddle, Michael Vash, he got me down the Pipewire train early this year, and I'm going to put in the link. I did write an article about Pipewire on OpenSUSE in the setup process. It was pretty rudimentary. So a lot of the dependencies, if the packages are built correctly, a lot of those dependencies are just going to be pulled in automatically. So you shouldn't have to worry about all the different little nitnoid things. But there's a step-by-step what you have to do, at least in OpenSUSE. I'm sure the packages are very similar because they not really that different from one to another. And I also want to put, I think this is it here. This is Vash. This is his video on Pipewire on Fedora, which basically I used his information to basically make a little write-up. Sure, what's up, Dan?
I just wanted to ask Thomas, did you have to uninstall Pulse Audio to install Pipewire?
It does that automatically. Yes, it should.
No, it does not uninstall Pulse if you install Pipewire. If you go and
What I asked is, do you have to uninstall it? Or should you?
I would if you're actually going to swap over. Otherwise, you might end up having other issues, but it will not automatically remove Pulse.
And does the Pipewire,
in order to do that,
is the Pipewire tied in with ALSA at all?
Yes.
There is a package to tie it in. Yes.
Okay.
But you shouldn't need to install that. It should hook in on its own since ALSA is part of the kernel.
So when I did the installation, Zipper removed the Pipewire Pulse Audio module. So there's a Pipewire Pulse Audio module so if you're running Pulse Audio primarily, there's a whatever. And so it automatically takes care of that. But I will say, though, it's really nice because once you make that switch to Pipewire, you don't have any problem with that high-quality audio sync stuff. It's all tip-top. Pretty great. So Eric joined us. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks.
Hi, Eric.
I'm so
Hello.
glad you're here. Yep, we can hear you. Loud and crystal.
Good,
Clear.
good.
So, is there anything else on audio you want to bring up that you think would be good for the class?
What was the distro we ran last week? What was it? How did we pronounce that?
Garuda, but it might be actually
Garuda?
pronounced
That
Garud.
I chose to run Pipewire on that, and everything worked flawlessly. Everything I threw at it, and
that's good.
so I had good luck with Pipewire.
I actually have an issue with, it must be the newer kernel. I'm not sure, but I'm having an issue with my external, my USB microphone interface, where it's not recognizing it. It sees it as it used to see it as both an input and an output, and now it sees it as an output, not an but not an input. So the microphone isn't showing up. I noticed it prior to the upgrade to the new version of Ubuntu on Arch. So I'm guessing it must be the newer kernel, and maybe they changed the driver setup somehow. But yeah, it's it's really strange that it's just a USB device, and for some reason it just isn't recognized. I mean, it's powering up. It's still there's nothing else has changed, and it worked fine in 2110. I'm sorry, in 2104, and now 2110. After I did the upgrade, it's doing the same thing it was doing on Arch. So yeah, I guess the common thing would be a newer kernel, but I'm not entirely sure yet. And I haven't had a driver issue on Linux in so long that it's like, now I have to remember how to go back and figure out how to install a driver for a module or whatever. So
that's a new one for me. I've never actually had an audio USB thing not behave properly before. That's a new one. I wonder if there's some
one for me too.
There's some sort of like something in the blacklist, of
I mean, it's not an uncommon thing either. It's just that it's a normal USB microphone.
It's a full boat.
Well,
yeah.
But I mean, it's still just saw it as both an input and an output. So it was never like all of this functionality was all it did was see it as this through this cable as an in and out. It's basically another sound card,
right?
So all the stuff that happens on here, that the mixing that goes on is, it's just a Behringer, and this is like what everybody starts out with whenever they decide to get a USB interface. It's like the $69 special,
It's the common one.
Yeah, exactly. So I would be surprised. I probably just need to search and see if, I'm guessing other people will have had an issue as well. So maybe I can ride on their shirt tails.
Are you doing pulse audio or Pipewire?
Well, this is just normal Ubuntu, so I'm assuming it's Pulse.
You might want to just for smiles, just try changing out the sound server, because when I did that with my laptop, it solved my weirdness with the with audio, but it did sort of break Easy FX / Pulse FX. That doesn't actually still work properly, and but I don't use it for that, so it doesn't really matter. I think having like an external compressor would be nice. The more I think about it.
So, what did you need to? Well, and you're doing it from a different system, but I'm wondering how easy it is to just swap in Pipewire on Ubuntu specifically.
I can't imagine it be very hard. It was pretty straightforward in Fedora, the last version, as well as OpenSUSE. So I can't imagine.
I'm assuming for me, it's just sudo app install all these packages that have turned up from the search.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I'd want to have a little bit more. I think
a surgical approach as opposed to a sledgehammer approach.
Yeah, I think I would rather.
Well, they're all the packages that Thomas has mentioned. They're in the repos. And I know they probably won't be in the package manager anywhere because it's Debian. But if you do an apt search and then Pipewire, it gives you a list of all the Pipewire packages.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I found an article that is explaining how to do it. So, yeah, my method is always I'll probably follow these instructions in a virtual machine and make sure that they work.
That'd probably be best.
And if they do work, then yeah.
And like I mentioned earlier, the packages I mentioned are for Ubuntu. I was actually doing it on a 2204 based distro. I am assuming 2110 would probably do it as well. Anything else, it's going to differ. Because I know 2004 doesn't have those packages available. Like, I know that for a fact.
Yeah, this is saying that
at least in the, not all.
Yeah, this is saying that it's just Pipewire audio client libraries, and that'll install everything you need. And it's just in the normal repository.
It might be most of the stuff you need, but I don't know if it's all of it.
Okay.
I don't know. I'll check the dependencies and see.
Gotcha. All right. Well, this person is saying, Okay. Yeah. I'll follow this or find some way and test it out, and then see if maybe Pipewire makes any difference. But
Give the link, put it in the chat. I'd like to look at it too.
okay. It says it's for 2104, but I have no reason to believe it wouldn't work for 2110.
Hey, I got Debian to actually play Blu-ray discs this week, which is in Linux said to be impossible in every thread.
And I've been using Blu-rays on my solar system for the last year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
I've been
no,
using
that's
Blu-ray
fine.
also.
Yeah, no issue.
I had the hardest time getting them to work.
All right, so let's get on to our distro exploration, which was the wildcard Ubuntu's this week. So anything Ubuntu is we're exploring this week. So the Ubuntu proper, I put a poll in the middle. I should have done it sooner, but I didn't. There you go. That's what I was kind of busy. I should have asked Eris if he could do a poll, but I forgot. So the choices were Ubuntu, Kubuntu, Lubuntu, Ubuntu Budgie, Ubuntu Kylin or Chillin. Looks like Kylin to me. Mate, Studio, and Xubuntu, or something else. We had 7% of the votes went to Ubuntu proper, 20% for Kubuntu, which I put my vote on that one. Lubuntu got 20%. Budgie got 0, so I don't know where you were on that one, Peter. Anyway, Mate got 0, Studio got 0, and Xubuntu got 13%. And then 40% of the votes went to something else. So, I don't know what that something else is, but, there you go.
My vote was for XFCE.
So Xubuntu, okay.
And not all of us voted for the favorite thing we use all the time. We wanted to go outside our boxes.
Sure. But so which delicious flavor of Ubuntu were you using? That was basically it. And so did anybody here use Ubuntu proper?
He just popped in.
He probably when I said something, he just showed up.
I used Ubuntu proper. I did an in-place upgrade of 2104.
Now, how did that upgrade go?
It.
Oh, you did? Well,
it was easy. It was fine. It was the typical disable all of the non-Ubuntu repositories, PPAs, and all that stuff, and then remove anything that it needed to, install some new packages, and yeah, I didn't see any issues. I had to reinstall a couple things, but I mean, it tells you what it did, so pretty straightforward. I still think it's a little more difficult than like the average user would probably be interested in dealing with, because I mean, the idea that it's, if you installed anything that included its own repository like Google Chrome or anything that has its own external PPA, that it will disable it, and in some cases even remove the package. So I mean, I understand why they have to do it, but there's still just a little bit of kind of, it's not the greatest. But that's not to say it isn't that same sort of thing whenever you upgrade Windows as well. I mean, our Windows upgrades do the same exact thing. So anyway.
It wasn't as straightforward as just you have an update and click it and it would bring you to the latest version, or
well,
what did you do?
It's as straightforward as that to upgrade in place and then get back to your desktop. But then there's some cleanup pieces that they don't really explain. I don't feel like that are explained very well. Like if it did actually disable, then you can go to your software management tool, update preferences or something like that, and then look at the repositories, and it'll actually say disabled by upgrade, and you can choose then to re-enable the ones that were disabled. But that's an extra step, and again, someone who doesn't understand that maybe would never think, oh, I have Chrome installed, so I need to have the Google repository enabled,
Right. I'm picking up what you're laying down.
There's a couple
So
other
the-
things it did too. So the continued march towards snapping things.
Mhm.
So Firefox is a snap, which I thought, okay, fine, I'll play along. It's not my favorite thing. But I figured out that you can't use the extensions.gnome.org website for the browser if it's running in a sandbox environment. And that's true of both Snap and Flatpak. So I ended up needing to uninstall the Snap and install Firefox from the repository. So you can still do that. It's still there, but you have to, well, you don't have to remove the Snap. You could have both at the same time. But to make it less complicated, I just removed the Snap, installed the full version or the repository version of Firefox, and it works like you normally would expect. Also, they like to use the Snap-based software center, and the problem with it is it doesn't include Flatpaks. So the GNOME software property common Flatpak thing doesn't work for the Snap. So I removed that as well and installed the normal one from the repository, and then installed the plugins for Flatpak and Snaps. And so now I have a software management app that handles everything on the system. So
That's interesting. That's interesting. That I want to come back to that, but I want to see, like, for those. So Eris installed it proper. Also installed Ubuntu proper. Now, I didn't test any other Ubuntu, so I probably should have. But do you know if they've all gone to that newer style of installer yet? I don't know if they're using Flutter yet for everything, or if it's just. Or
Nobody
what.
has.
Nobody-
They're also using Ubiquity. The ones that are using Ubiquity, like Ubuntu is using what is it called? Calamares. So they're not affected
Okay.
at all. But
Okay.
the change will happen if it does happen for the next LTS, maybe. Who knows?
Okay.
It's still up in the air.
Okay. So who started using? I'm just curious here. So Ubuntu started in 2004. Did anybody here use Ubuntu in 2004 or give it a try? I'm just curious. Okay.
I was 4 or 5 at that time.
Yeah, I probably did.
2004.
Yeah, I did. I know I did because I remember it being such a revelation at the time.
Okay. So Dan says in the chat that Ubuntu Studio and Lubuntu use Calamares. Now, this is I've installed Kubuntu several times over the years, and this is the first time the installation process had it actually started installing while I finished up with other, like, my username and some other preferences. I thought that was pretty slick. A little bit disconcerting also at the same time. I'm not sure why, but because I'm not used to that. But that was nice because by the time I got done with all my personal preferences, pretty much it was just wrapping up the installation and I could reboot. I thought that was pretty darn clever. I don't know if anybody else kind of had that same, like, wow.
Which Ubuntu did you?
I did.
test?
I'm sorry. I did Kubuntu.
You did, okay, because I didn't have that experience, and I use Ubuntu, the QT one.
Yeah, Calamares, it waits until you actually confirm everything.
Right.
Whereas Ubiquity, as soon as you get done with partitioning, it starts the installation. Like, as soon as you get done with that, it starts out getting stuff on there. It's supposed to make it go faster, but the problem is Ubiquity is one of the slower installers, so it kind of needs that head start.
Calamares also does that, though.
Does it?
Yeah.
All right. So maybe I didn't notice it because Goranu,
Garuda.
Garudanu.
Gordita
Sorry.
Crunch, Gordita Crunch,
Garudanu.
Taco Bell.
Gordita Crunch. That sounds delicious. He says that it's been doing that for years, but I don't remember it last time. Maybe I haven't used it in years. So, well, regardless, I liked it. I thought it was really pretty cool because, well, I'm used to the OpenSUSE installer, which is probably the slowest installer, I think, or one of the slowest ones. And but it builds it all, it assembles it all for you and pulls it down dynamically if you do net install. So, for what it's worth. But
Debian's kind of the same way because it's a net installer.
Yeah, but I thought it was really neat, that process. Did anybody have any difficulties with the installation process for any of their flavors?
I did.
You did? What? And you were running Ubuntu proper.
I installed Ubuntu, Kubuntu, Ubuntu Mate, and I think Ubuntu. I
Okay.
didn't test them out very much, but I did install them.
Okay.
For the ones that use Ubiquity, it would always warn me that I did not set a ESP partition, but this is under BIOS. And I had the same warning if I installed it on VirtualBox for Ubuntu. And I didn't test Ubuntu Mate on VirtualBox, but I did test it on hardware. And it does install it though. After you go continue, this says the system might not boot afterwards. I did it anyways, and it didn't work. I think in Groovy Gorilla, the same thing happened, but it wouldn't work afterwards. If it warned you that you didn't have the ESP partition, even though you were running BIOS, it would try installing it, but it wouldn't work. Now it does work, but you still get that warning.
That's a nice compromise, I think. Sort of that it assumes EFI is the default, which is probably a sane thing to do in this day and age, but like still installs as if it would if like it's not present.
Yeah, I installed it in using Virt Manager, and I don't know what it used by default there, but I didn't get any warnings or anything crazy there. So, and they're using Plasma version 5.22.
Virt Manager, you can change it between UEFI and BIOS when you create the virtual machine, but the default is BIOS. So it probably was installed using BIOS unless you specified.
All right, then installed using BIOS, it didn't complain. So, Eris, what were you using to install it?
VirtualBox and hardware as BIOS, and I have it on BIOS on VirtualBox.
Okay. So, Colin, what did you install?
I installed. Let's see. I installed a few of them: Mate, Budgie, Chillin, Ubuntu, and Cinnamon. Like Aris, I haven't really tried them all, but the Cinnamon one is the one I've been looking at. I quite like the way they've presented their desktops. Pretty good. They got a couple of different icons, and their theming's nice. All the aesthetics are pretty nice. So haven't had a lot of time to go through them all. Ubuntu Mate to me seems to just get better and better with every release, especially aesthetically. They just made that desktop look really good. And Mate is not one of my favorite desktops. Not because there's anything wrong with it, it's just I don't find it as one of my favorites. But gee, they're doing some really good work in Ubuntu Mate, I must say. But I thought I'd check Cinnamon out as well. And the Chillin desktop actually interests me a little bit, actually, but that's still in heavy development, I would think, the Chillin desktop. But that's a very interesting desktop itself, that one.
It is interesting. I actually keep my eye on it because I think they're doing some, they have some really interesting polish in the way some things work. And I sort of like think it's that, and some of those, those fringe ones, the Chinese ones, there's a different aesthetic to them. It's interesting. And I have no idea if that's like a cultural thing or just completely by accident.
Yeah, they tend to have,
because Deepin is,
yeah, they got this eye for detail or something. I don't know whether, unless they've just got a huge amount of resources that they can throw at a distro.
I mean, but even like their installers, like just they have a lot of polish on things in a way that other distros just kind of, they spend their time on, they don't look at the, I guess, the presentation part of it as much as, and again, this is completely just, I'm basing this on the 2 or 3 distros that I've seen that are strictly developed for the Chinese market, but they do seem to have that kind of attention to detail. And Colin, I know you're saying the same thing. So
yeah, well, they've got, I think it's based on, the UK UI is based on LXQT, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dan would know.
Yeah, I think it does have some cute components. They use a lot of the Mate components as well. Like you notice the terminal is Mate terminal.
Yes,
They've
I've
got some
noticed
other
that.
things too. I think that like the file manager, things like that. I know they have. I think they have the Mate archiver, whatever that is too. So yeah, they use some of the Mate things.
Yeah, I noticed that, and they got their own file manager called Peony, which
Oh, yeah.
is
Yep.
still in development because there's still quite a few things aesthetically not right with it, but it seems to just improve as it goes. But yeah, it's always sometimes you're not sure whether to use these new file managers and whether you come across issues and things like that. So
Yeah, you're always a little bit like, should I trust?
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, getting back to Ubuntu Cinnamon, well, it's actually still called Cinnamon Remix, is it? I think it's still called Cinnamon Remix. So
Yeah, 'cause
they're
it's
not
not
an
a-
official flavor yet, are they?
Right.
No.
Okay. All right. But they seem to be doing some pretty good work. It's, it's cinnamon. It's pretty much not much you can say about the Cinnamon desktop, really. I just like the way they've made it their own and given it their own look is quite nice. And they're using a lot of the Yaru icons and things like that. So it just looks really nice. So caught my attention, really.
So of the distributions that you tried to include the cinnamon flavor, what would you say was your one you enjoyed the most?
I really can't pinpoint any one individual one at the moment, to be honest.
Well, that's fine. I'm just curious if there's one that like stuck out.
Yeah. Well, cinnamon probably stuck out a little bit. That's probably why I've been on it a little bit more than the others. I suppose I could say cinnamon. But I just enjoy them all, to be honest. I just enjoy trying them all because just all this, there's just so many changes happening at the moment. Whereas people are just making things so much better and easier and more convenient. I'm looking forward to trying the new, what's the name of the new installer? Is it Flutter or something like that? What's the new installer?
Well, it
I
uses
don't know.
Flutter. I don't know if they've given it a name yet.
Oh, it's replacing Ubiquity, but they haven't done that yet, right?
Right.
Right.
Correct.
It's on a horse with no name.
Yeah.
From what I understand, it uses a lot of stuff from Subiquity, which is the installer that they use on the server version. It just that has a text-based interface, but this, of course, will be using Flutter, which is the GUI. But apparently, from what I've heard, it's going to look very similar, just operate slightly differently. I don't know. Ubiquity seems to work fine for me. It's just getting a bit, long in the tooth.
Yeah, well, I think it's about time they introduced a new installer because it's been that one for a long time. So, it's time for a change, I suppose. But as long as it works a bit quicker and... Are you muted, Nate?
When... I'm so ashamed of me. So when you say you're...
We're ashamed of you too.
That's good. You should be. I try to type with it muted, so because I clicky. So when you say it's long in the tooth and should be replaced, I mean, it seems like if it's not broken, why fix it? Because Ubiquity has always been a good experience for me. I don't know if maybe somebody else has a similar thought.
Oh, but it is breaking.
Oh,
it's getting there.
And it isn't a bad idea to occasionally just completely rewrite an app. It's not a good idea to do that all the time. But every once in a while, like once every 3 to 5 years maybe, rewrite large chunks of an app. And the reason I say that is because in that time, new technologies can come out. And by completely rewriting large segments, it can be easier to use that new technology. And that can make it easier to maintain. It can make it faster. It can make it so you can add new functionality. And it also forces you to refactor your code, which means you get cleaner looking code. You don't want to do that all the time.
employed.
You don't, like I said, you don't want to do that all the time because you want to iterate as well. Because just straight up rewriting stuff all the time makes it way too much work. But just every few years or so, it's a good idea to straight up rewrite.
Another important consideration is the different flavors and their requirements from the installer and what it takes for each of them to implement their design and their tools with that installer. So there are some challenges that have come up on that front as well.
One of the things that can be improved is that when you set a minimal install, and it installs everything. It doesn't install the minimal install. It installs everything, and then it goes back and removes things. So that's one thing that can be improved if they rewrite the installer.
Depending on the way that operates, I could see that actually being a necessity, because if I were to implement that in Draugr OS, that would be how I'd have to do it, because the way it operates is it extracts a squashfs file, which contains the entire operating system. So all those packages are already there. So I'd have to go back and have it remove it afterwards anyway. There's no other way for me to do it especially in an internet-free environment where you can't just do a bootstrap.
Just dump it to RAM.
Maybe.
I want to.
It's done that before. I've seen it do it. It's funny.
I would have thought another theory would be that as technology changes, you're adding snaps, you're adding so many new different technologies. You'd have to think that the installer would have to be changed to sort of keep up. It's just a theory, but I mean, you'd have to think that possibly they've got to keep up with those things.
To an extent, yeah. Depending on the way your code is written, you may not have to worry about it too much. For instance, going back to Draugr OS, with that extracting a squashfs file, if I had done this 20 years ago, most CPUs would be single core, single thread. So the package I used to do that unsquashing may not have been multi-threaded. In today's world, basically every CPU has a minimum of 2 threads. Most have more. So because I'm using another package, I wouldn't have to worry about this. But if I were unsquashing it myself, then I would have to completely rewrite it to take advantage of that multi-threading. So it depends on the way it's written and what exact technology you're talking about. Because in some ways, you may not have to rewrite it at all. That may be somebody else's issue, or somebody else may have written it in such a way already to be able to take advantage of that. But in other ways, it's a necessity.
So Calamares has been around for a long time, and it's probably one of the most used installers. Dan, is that an accurate statement? It's used by multiple distributions.
I think if you look at all of the distributions across all of the Linux desktop, I think Calamares is very popular. In that way, it's obviously not really popular, and it didn't get chosen in Ubuntu, but yeah, I think it's very popular. Unscientifically,
Right, but I mean, it seems like a lot of installers are using Calamares. It seems to be one of the most common forms, and I think Elementary rolls their own. Is that correct, Shickle?
Yep. So there are some other ones. Obviously, OpenSUSE has their own. Yeah, and PC Linux OS, Elementary, Pop OS, which those two are kind of similar. There's others as well, but yeah, I would say Calamares is probably more popular in the sense that it hits more distributions.
I did read somewhere, I don't know where, but it said that the Calamares installer was introduced to be a universal installer for Linux.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I think Ubiquity is probably surprisingly number 2, though, when you think about it, because there's other, all of the derivations of Ubuntu are, or the older ones anyway, are using Ubiquity. So like Zorin is using that, and I don't know, there's other ones that escape me right now, but there are many that use that as well. So that's also fairly popular.
And it wasn't until like very recently that, Elementary stopped using it. And I know
Yep.
Mint, I think still
Yeah,
uses
Mint still
it.
does.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mint
that's another one.
does.
And they're very, very they're very popular. So it's I think it's really pulled its weight as a whole, like I think it's done a great job. And any installer really is an impressive piece of work. The ability to sort of dynamically set up an operating system on hardware that you may not have even tested against is really impressive stuff, and it's not easy to do right. So it's for it to have been around this long and still be working its magic is very impressive.
Well, the Calamares installer to me is impressive in the fact that it's so flexible, because you have some distros like Garuda, for example, and others that I've seen. You can actually have the choice of installing software during install, and it has that flexibility. And I really like that, because people can go to town with that, and really,
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very modular, and you can add as much as you want or as little as you want, and I think that's ultimately what makes it a universal installer for all these other distributions. So
yeah.
So Run with the Dolphin said in the chat that Calamari says the distinction of not being attached to a particular distro.
Right.
So they are, by its virtue, very flexible in that regard. So things are plugged into it. So a framework of sorts.
Yep.
It's very, very interesting. Like the development of that for sure. And it seems like I don't track it closely, but it seems like the development on Calamares is pretty active. So it's
very active.
So it doesn't seem like it's slowing down at all.
They get a lot of feedback, coming in from all the different distributions that are using it. So they have quality feedback from actual developers using the product that can inform them directly of like what their priorities need to be. And so I'm sure they have more than they could possibly handle.
Yeah, and it's not just feedback. I mean, a lot of those downstream developers are also contributing patches and things like that, and contributing right to Calamares. So
good point.
It's more than just adding on work to build it. They're actually contributing to it as well. So that makes a big difference when you get that. I mean, it helps push the project, to be more active.
If you think about it in terms of like success as an open source project, and the idea of like that, exactly what Dan's saying, the virtuous cycle or circle of, taking and then contributing, Calamares has got to be right up there, because so many distributions use it, and that's the primary method of installing it. I mean, you only use it once technically, but it's important as that first touch and getting it on the system. And it has to be very versatile, because it's easy. I mean, I think back to installers. We're sitting here, discussing, debating the value or the Calamares and Ubiquity. Think back to how installers were, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You asked if someone had used Ubuntu back in 2004. I guarantee you it wasn't that easy to install back then. There was a certain amount of heavy lifting you had to do. You had to know your system very well, and it was very easy to either blow up your existing partitions, overwrite things, your boot, records. Like it was very, very easy. And a lot of times they weren't telling you what was happening. It wasn't explicit. And so you would click next on a step and it would take an action without you understanding the repercussions. And it was too late by the time you realized it. So
at this point,
we've come a long way. Yeah.
At this point, it's pretty universal. You see like a sanity check before you start doing anything permanent on your system. And I appreciate that with all installers. And I have not experienced any Ubuntu flavor derivative work that has not given me a sanity check. So that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
They used to have that on an installer too. They used to have it at the end of some installers, sanity check, didn't they?
I think so. They might have.
Yeah.
It's a fairly common term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think OpenSUSE does that. If you try to install it without the bootloader, it tells you that you shouldn't do that. That the system might not boot that way.
Yep. Yeah. If you try and do something custom that doesn't work, it'll let you know
from yourself. Yeah.
Mhm.
I just want to make one small point, and I don't want to make it into a huge argument. The snide comment I made about keeping developers occupied or employed, there's definitely a sense in a lot of cases, and especially from a user's perspective, that redeveloping software that already works is sometimes seen as being sort of I mean, first of all, I think it's unnecessary in some cases. It just genuinely is. It depends on how the software team is structured and like how the priorities are set. If the developers themselves are in charge of the priorities, then you will see a lot of adoption of like newer frameworks and things that purport to make life easier. And so a lot of effort goes into technical debt and like making things easier, I guess, to implement new features and things like that. But the cost of that is the lack of momentum in getting new features or focusing that development attention elsewhere. And also the other side effect of that is you start breaking other things. So if they make a change in their software, then downstream from them, they're making that change to everyone else as well. This is something that GNOME does every release, where they decide they're going to break all the extensions, for example. It's a poor practice, in my opinion. And I always refer to a change for the sake of change, because it's essentially, at least in some respects, it genuinely is just some developer trying to push some like new thing that they found that they think is cool, that really isn't as important as they want to think it is. And and it eventually and inevitably causes a bigger problem than anyone really thinks. And even a small change can be a big pain to deal with downstream of, and downstream doesn't necessarily mean another project, but like documentation, user documentation, that's a big part of, managing a project. And there's a lot that goes into deciding whether or not to rewrite something, not just the blanket statement that Thomas made, where it's a good idea to just do it on a regular basis. I'm not buying that. I'm sorry. There has to be a good reason to do it for you to go undertake doing that. So just want to throw that out there. That's all.
Yeah, for sure. So Dan, which version of, which delicious flavor of Ubuntu did you try, or multiple? Did you?
Which Dan?
Dan Kelly. I know which one Dan Simmons ran. So
I did Ubuntu.
Okay. Oh, well, there you go, Dan. Both Dan's.
I did Dan's distro, and I did this. Normally, I use Mate. I have it on my laptop. I have 2004 on that one, LTS. So I didn't really want to tear up that laptop because it works perfectly fine with Ubuntu Mate. I wanted to step out of my box and see what Dan's distro was like, and what I found out is it's a lot like Sparky in many ways. When I started playing with it, I wanted to see if the snaps were installed. The snap core was not installed by default. It comes kind of bare clean. You choose what kind of route you want to install your apps from, whether you want to get them right from a repository, Flatpak, or Snap. So I installed the Snap thing, and it's the program says hello world and all that, and played with that for a minute. And then I went to the Flatpaks and installed that because I wanted to reproduce the way I actually got Blu-rays to play on Linux, because that was my whole week project right there. It installs from the installer with a FAT32 EFI boot. Automatically defaults to extend 4 for the rest of the filing system. Firefox, it kind of, when you open it up, it starts, Fire starts here, and it's got, some goofy thing. I think it can do a lot better. Firefox started up and had like a Ubuntu page pop up, perhaps. But that's no big deal here or there. The team's probably stretched pretty thin as it is. I don't know about those things. It comes with a K3B disk burner. I thought that was kind of interesting. On the GNOME side, I use Bizarro most of the time, but KB3 is just as good. I think it's a good choice for this distro. My printer drivers is another story. I went to make my printer work on this, and I finally did, but I had to do it in a roundabout way. There's a package installer. It's a Q-apt package installer, and I tried to get it to install a deb package from Epson to install my printer drivers, and it kept coming up. The dependencies weren't met, or some kind of dependency problem. However, but I opened Discover by right-clicking on the package and selecting Discover, and Discover actually installed the drivers for me.
So wait, real quick. So Ubuntu uses Discover?
Yep. Yes, it's part of the it's a Qt thing.
How long has that been a thing?
Since the start.
Since we started 1810.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, this is kind of weird because isn't the other package installer I mentioned, the Q-apt package installer, supposed to install a deb package driver?
Yeah, so Q-apt installer should be like GDebi equivalent,
Yes, I thought.
if you will. Yep, it's supposed to be.
And it said it was missing dependencies or something like that, and it wouldn't tell me which ones. And I know with Debian, I had the same problem. There's an LSB package you have to have installed for the drivers to work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I have that package too, but I didn't need to use it. But when I right-clicked on the package and selected Discover actually installed the package for me. So I don't know if it went out and got the LSB requirements and made it work or what.
It probably did. It probably installed the app package that you had plus any other dependencies that it needed. So Q-apt installer is kind of assuming that you have everything you need when you go to install that deb package, or everything is included in the deb package, and it doesn't need to go grab anything probably. And so then Discover is actually doing that in the background.
Yeah, because GDebi kind of tells you which dependency you need to make your thing work, so you can go out and hunt around for it.
Right.
Where this one left me hanging loose, not knowing, what the cause of the problem was, but nor there. I got my print. Nice little Ubuntu, ink job here. Keeps my printer clean. I like the idea that you package this with the Pulse Audio Volume Control Center, or PAV Audio, or however they, with other distros name this. This got the full, Pulse Audio suite of things to select from when you pull it up. That is a nice touch. It should come with every distro. It's like the Swiss Army knife of Pulse Audio. I like the fact that the world clock settings, you can right click on it. It'll bring up from the clock the settings for it, and you can go right to 12 hours instead of Army time.
I prefer 24-hour clock. So before you go on with that, I want to
you're ex-military though.
Well, not yet. I did put my retirement paperwork in. Before we did going too far with everything else, I want to see what Peter what he installed, and if he had any issues in Chickle.
Okay.
And
I'm done anyways. That's the end of the list.
Well, you see, now you're not supposed to do everything at once, Dan, because then we have nothing you can go refer back to later.
We always can go back to how I got these to play on the machine.
Sure, yeah, that's good.
You run out of material.
We never run out of material. When we talk about Ubuntu's, we don't run out of material. We actually have more material than there is time. So
yeah, it's like they pop up so often too.
Wait, did I skip over Jinda? Did I skip over you?
I have no idea. That's up to you.
I think I did.
That's
Someone check me, make sure. So what did you install, and what did you enjoy?
I did Ubuntu.
Okay, so you also did Ubuntu. Okay, great.
Yeah, I did.
All right.
And so any issues with the installation process?
No, the installation went smooth. All the applications I installed went smooth. The only two ththings I noticed that I thought were not wrong, odd, The one thing I noticed was when I went to change the wallpaper, there was previews for some and not others. I just thought that was strange. I don't think it means anything. And the only thing when I went on my list for all the software that I wanted to do, there wasn't a GUI, a graphic user interface for the firewall. That was it. That's the only two things that I noticed that I thought was a little odd, but they were easily fixed and everything actually worked flawlessly. I had no real issues with it whatsoever.
That's
I
good.
watched a lot of multimedia with it. I even watched a Blu-ray with it. I watched a DVD with it. I really multimedia tested. I listened to music with it. And I got these nice JBL headphones here to test out the pipe wire with because I really like these.
That's cool. Well, good. Now, Peter, what did you install and what was your experience?
I'm going to give my whole report in one go. I installed Ubuntu. It works. End of report.
Well, actually, that's not true because Ubuntu have now put Rhythm Box in by default.
Colin,
now.
I said it works for. Okay, it works for me.
And there was some. And there was something else they did too. I can't remember what it was.
I didn't install VLC because I do that in anything.
How does the Ubuntu experience differ compare to something like MX Linux? Is it pretty similar? Is it?
You can't compare it to because they're different bases.
Well, I mean,
always tell the base it's on. Huh? I don't know what you're asking.
Well, I wasn't sure like how like the expression of the desktop, how different it is, because I know by default.
Well, I used XFCE for years, and funny enough, it's not really changed.
I didn't install the latest 2110, but Ubuntu has all the advantages Ubuntu has with drivers, easily installing drivers and stuff like that. MX has a lot of different tools that Ubuntu doesn't have though, like boot repair, other things like that, like the whole MX tools. That Ubuntu doesn't have equivalents, but you have the advantage of having Ubuntu as a backend for PPAs if you want those, or easily snaps, stuff like that.
Okay.
I think if you want an XFCE desktop and you want to start sort of clean and do your own things, Ubuntu is probably a really good platform to start with that, to be honest.
Okay.
My only slight learning curve was I have not used any of Ubuntu for a few years, and I'm really not used to snaps. I'm not fond of snaps. And I noticed that a lot of the software in the software center is snap.
I kind of, you know what, Peter, I kind of got the same sentiment feeling. Well, when I tried Ubuntu, though, it gave me a choice of where I wanted to get my stuff from.
It does tell you where it's coming from, but
right.
It wasn't really
I don't use Debian. I run Debian, and everybody knows with Debian how hard it is to find software for them. And I go to Flatpak first, and I don't bother with snaps because I want to run snaps and Flatpaks on the same operating system.
I like the fact that Discover is very transparent, and it tells you, like, it gives you the option to tick whether you want.
It is one thing about Discover is if you open Discover and you have Flatpaks and snaps installs, it puts a little icon right by them if they're installed when you see them and you're looking through Discover. I thought that was a nice touch.
Well, cool. So Schickel, if you're still there, what did you install that you want to talk about? No, if you don't want to talk about it, that's okay too. Prophetic, welcome to the stream. Glad you're here. I don't know how long you can hang out. I know you're limited in your time typically on a Saturday night, but if you want to, pipe wire in with any of your thoughts, see what I did there.
I tried Mate, Ubuntu Mate. And just like in keeping with a lot of my traditional BDLL experiments with distros, I confirm that downloading the ISO and booting it once works. that's it. That's all I had time for this past week.
Yeah, that's all right.
But yeah, so I'm official like ISO downloader tester for Biddle. I have an intent of downloading and installing, and then I click around a little bit, and then I lose kind of track and don't really come back to it. But I think I installed it and ran it for like 5 minutes before having to jump on something else. But yeah,
it's all good.
It was fine.
So I find my experience generally has been with Ubuntu's. It's a pretty well, I don't want to say unexciting, because it's always exciting when there's a new release, but you don't really get like excitement, kind of like sweating excitement. You know what I mean? Like there's not that kind of excitement with a new release.
The wow factor.
Yeah, you get a wow factor. You get to see all the improvements. I think OpenSUSE Tumbleweed has kind of spoiled me on the whole like new Plasma, because it used to be when I'd get like a new Plasma every 6 months or to a year, I'd be like, wow, look at all the changes. But yeah, I mean the Plasma that I think that Kubuntu gave me was great. 5.22, so it's not like old. And I notice they do like the little tweaks and the branding that they put in there. I really appreciate the different little bits of branding that all the distributions do, actually. So I want to, as far as like user added applications, now the one thing I appreciate so much about Ubuntu's is, and which they should, but snaps are enabled by default. There's no fiddling about, because I do use snaps and Flatpak and app images on my OpenSUSE systems, all of them. I happen to like I try them all, and I use the one that I like the best, and then I run that one. I think that's a fair way to go. And so snaps, like the Bitwarden snap is, I like it way better than the Flatpak snap. And so I use the Bitwarden snap because it recognizes that there's a dark theme. The Flatpak one doesn't, stuff like that. And also it updates automatically, and I don't have to worry about things, because my password manager, I got to have that working all the time. Otherwise, I don't like being without it. That's what it boils down to. So there's that. And so I'm kind of curious, like as far as applications, just like some experiences here. As far as like, did you add anything? Was there anything that you couldn't get on the flavor of Ubuntu you tried that you wish you had to take extra time for? I guess that's really what I focus on, because Ubuntu's got probably the widest, maybe next to Arch, the widest software availability. So was there anything that software-wise you could not get? I'm curious if anybody had any issues. No?
No, we're great.
I mean, I've been on this install since, I don't think I did a fresh install. I think this is the second upgrade I did. I'm pretty sure I was on 2010. I upgraded to 2104 and then upgraded to 2110.
And no
so
hiccups?
I haven't. No, and besides disabling repositories and needing to go back in and re-enable them, and uninstalling a couple packages, it's really minor stuff, especially to be able to have the continuity of everything still set up and not needing to move into a new desktop, so to speak. And I haven't had any issues. I mean, Ubuntu, I think that's the one argument you could make for something like, or one of the arguments you could make for something like OpenSUSE or any of the Arch-based flavors, because there's just so much software available. I mean, pretty much if it's made anywhere, there's either a package build under the OBS for OpenSUSE or in the AUR. So availability of packages, Flatpak is, for me personally, I like Flatpak better than Snap. It's just a personal thing. It's not not throwing shade in any direction or anything like that. It's just Flatpak works really well for me. And honestly, pretty much everything I ever need to run is either a Flatpak or a native package. And if not, then the developers give me a way to install it, either as a deb that I have to install manually, or adding a PPA or something like that. So I don't think and Ubuntu is sort of that universal flavor or universal distro. You know what I mean? If someone's building software or making software for Linux, the amorphous Linux desktop, better believe it's going to run on Ubuntu.
Oh, for sure.
So.
It's actually interesting that you say that you so you're using an Ubuntu base and you prefer the your Flatpak experience over the Snap experience. I'm running OpenSUSE, and I prefer the Snap experience over the Flatpak experience. I just find that funny because it doesn't seem like that makes sense.
I think snaps are great, and I use snaps all the time on the server side. So for things like Nextcloud, for anything server based that is it's so easy with a snap to just to just say snap install, and then it's just like magically sets up your server for you. Like snap on the server for me is it really is. It's amazing. I've never made friends with it on the desktop because of the restrictions on the UI that I have seen, and now some of the sandboxing issues that I've seen. That's really my biggest thing.
So. Yeah, I just want to highlight two quick things. How amazing is it being a Linux user in this day and age, where we're trying out all these different like versions and flavors, and no one's talking about Wi-Fi drivers. Here is like it worked. That was it. Like when we're kind of dipping our toes in different distros, and like we don't really have that much crazy out. And then Eric mentions like just rolling from upgrade to upgrade with no real major issue. Like it is so good to be a Linux user these days. And on this, like the icing on the cake is like Flatpaks and snaps. We don't have to fumble around with PPAs, and even worst case scenario, you still have some PPAs if you were desperate enough for the software. So it's like we are definitely living in a golden age of some sort of like Linux distros.
No doubt, spoiled for choice is the word I think of. But you came here after I mentioned it, but I'm actually having an issue right now with the driver, which is so unusual that I've actually have to like put thought into like, how do I fix this? It's my USB audio interface for my microphone isn't getting picked up. Really weird. And I don't know if it's like a kernel issue because I noticed it on the Arch as well. So, I don't know if it's like a newer kernel series. Maybe they pulled some sort of driver or changed things around. So have to kind of figure that out. But I completely agree with you. I mean, to think back to what you'd have to go through to get software on a system. I mean,
the Wi-Fi drivers alone. Oh my goodness.
And you had to have it ready because if you were installing something and you needed those drivers as part of the installation, you had to, sidecar those on and, as part of the, I had mine on a floppy back in the day in 2004. I still had a floppy and a CD-ROM, but I had the floppy for the driver for my wireless stuff. Yeah. Crazy.
Did anybody here install Win modems or Lin modems in Linux back in the early 2000 oddies? Yeah, yep. That was an exercise in frustration every time.
Every time.
Also, something else that we don't talk about is having to manually mount USB drives and manually flush the cache.
Oh yeah.
All in the terminal, which we don't have to do anymore either. That was such a pain. Like I almost rage quitted Linux. Because
you had to manually mount everything. Any device you put on your system, it didn't matter what it was. You had to mount it yourself.
I secretly like this. This sounds kind of cool.
Oh God!
No,
Nate.
It wasn't cool.
Now, all you got to do is put your drive in the FastTab file, and it automatically mounts with no problems at all every time.
Well, it was incidentally a more secure system because nothing would auto load.
Yeah. What were you gonna say? Yes.
Yeah. So I will add one thing. You asked about installing software. I told you I'm not fond of snaps. I'm still learning, but I had installed VLC, and when I did a snap list, there only was like bare Core 18 VLC in there. Okay, let me try something else and see what it populates. So I went to the software center, picked something that I knew was a snap, picked something called Foobar 2000, which is a music player. So I installed that snap, did another snap list, and noticed that it installed Wine. I thought, okay, why is this Linux package installing wine? So when I went to run it, it said set up Windows environment. Turns out it's a Windows program that runs under wine, but it was under the Ubuntu Software Center.
So it brought in wine because it needed wine to run, and that's why
Yes, exactly.
it's all snaps together. So.
Yeah, so wine is in the snap.
That's pretty wild.
I remember when oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, but he's always going those crazy rants. He used to co-host Biddle too.
I got to know.
No.
Oh, he does crazy rants.
Yeah. Gentleman who is always smashing through those RBs in the trucking game.
EB.
Yeah.
Not EB,
No,
but also
Zeb.
it was Zeb. Yeah, Zeb.
Oh, Zeb. Oh,
He's always going those rants like criticizing Flatpak or snaps because like you pull in like a 300 megabyte software, but it pulls in like the entire desktop environment sometimes behind it, and there's like 2 gigs on the system. I think they kind of help solve for that, but yeah, there's some stuff that if you're not expecting or don't know what's underneath the hood a little bit, it could be kind of like you get surprised here and there with snaps and Flatpaks and stuff.
I've gotten to this point where I understand the inner workings probably more than I need to as a user. And I find that I actually don't want to know. Like I don't. I do not want to know. Like the more I think about it, the more it stresses me out. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna pretend I didn't see that.
I just want to use it. I don't want to know how it works.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you don't want to know how the sausage is made.
Yeah,
No.
you just that's exact analogy.
totally true there, Dan.
It is
But
true.
has
I mean,
anyone-
you install. Go ahead,
Go ahead,
Professor.
Eric.
No, go ahead, man.
No, I was gonna say, has anyone solved the issue that, or still see the issue where if you have a lot of snaps, like it's mounting snaps, and you see them in the file manager?
In the loop, yeah, a lot of people don't like snaps because of that loop thing that it puts in, and it's
That
just
is
got so
kinda
many
annoying.
things.
It depends on the file manager too, because not all of them will. Some of them will ignore that.
I haven't
Yeah.
seen one
Oh.
actually show snap mounts in a long time.
In terminal, you can see them. I'm looking at all my
Yeah.
Yeah,
snaps
if you
now.
do block list
There's,
or list block,
I think I have 34 installed or something like that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I have to look
I have a
back. 'Cause
bunch.
sometimes I
don't
do
see
see
it.
it, sometimes I don't. Can't remember which one was which.
But yeah,
but-
the file manager doesn't show them at all. Like Kate Plasma or Dolphin.
it's like
Seems
looking
to
at 30 something
discriminate it.
partitions.
Yeah, I think Thunar did it when I was on my MX Linux days.
Yeah, it could be.
But-
Yeah.
Um,
I'm like,
Honestly, I have mixed feelings about loop devices. They're weird.
I'm in Eric's boat when it comes to snaps and Flatpaks. I don't run snaps because it's too contained, because it stops you from getting to certain parts of your file system, whereas Flatpaks have a little bit more flexibility. And I know somebody did say that you can adjust that somehow. I can't remember how to do that, but
Yeah.
In the Snap Store application, you can adjust the permissions.
Yeah,
there's
there's
a-
an app for that called Snap or a Flat Seal.
Well, that's
It's
for
a
flat
GUI.
packs.
Yeah. For flat packs, you can. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do want to point out that snaps have the ability to ask for permissions from the user during runtime in the same way that on like Android, if you go to open something, it's like, hey, this would like permission to access this folder or this permission.
I like
Snaps
that.
can do that. Not all of them do that. I feel like all of them should do that because that's a really
Agreed.
cool thing to do.
I actually think that is such a I forget what I was listening to. I listen to a lot of like podcasts and such, throughout the day when I'm doing stuff, and they're talking about how we've been touting the security of Linux, but things like Android and iOS with the permissions system has actually in some ways become more secure in certain aspects as far as third-party software that because they are containerized and they do have those permission requests, so they're not allowed into everything on your system.
I'm a bit of an animal. I will admit I'm on macOS right now. But something that I've noticed that I kind of wish we could nail is I don't really know how macOS is handling it, but it seems to be complete throughout the entire system in regards to permissions. Even applications that I install from third-party sources, anytime they go to access anything, they're immediately like, they have to ask for permission. It could be, it's not just stuff from the App Store. It's not just stuff packaged, through Apple's system. It's anything, any app, any process that tries to access something, it has to ask for it first. Like
that's a fairly recent change for them, honestly, in the last couple of releases, probably.
I didn't know that.
I want to say it's a bigger change in Big Sur. So,
well,
just so you know,
with Linux,
it's fairly new for them too.
With Linux, to install something, you've got to put in your password to give it permission to even install it. So it assumes in your world that if you installed it, you can, it's safe to use.
I think the nice thing about containerization is it does kind of give a little more control back to the user, especially if it's not open source. Because if it's open source, obviously you can audit the code, and so there's some safety in that. But it's nice that snaps and Flatpaks do give you that kind of containerization, and hopefully they both give you that, like you said, Schickel, give you that that dynamic. Hey, we'd like to access your photos and your contacts. Is that okay, or something like that? Eris, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say that I posted the command for a simple grep command just to get rid of the snap from lsbalk. So I'll post it again, and you can use that just to not see the snaps in your terminal.
Filter it.
Yeah, filter it with grep.
That's really good.
Nice.
That little biddle.
That's why I come here.
To filter. That's it.
That's right. Well, just different things like that. I think it's great. So Max, welcome. Nice you could drop by.
Yeah. Hello.
Wasn't sure if you have been trying any Ubuntu's as of late and how that's going for you.
I haven't had the time to check one out this week, unfortunately.
Your mic is a little low.
Oh, one sec.
We never got around to asking Schickel either what he tried out.
Oh, that's true. We didn't.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Elementary.
I went with elementary. I was using Ubuntu proper and Lubuntu this time around, and I've got to say, like Ubuntu proper is good. I enjoy it. I mean, it just kind of feels like it's something I'm comfortable with. Didn't really have any issues with it. But honestly, I will say that I was more excited about Lubuntu. Not trying to brown nose you, Dan, but honestly, like LXQT has come so far, like so quickly, and that's really exciting to me because I kind of like Qt stuff, but KDE tends to overwhelm me, and LXQT just feels like a nice middle ground between having the power and the efficiency of Qt. I think where it just balances it nicely, and the more things that they do, and the more ways like I had in the past like 6 months, like 3 major show-stopping little things just go away, just be fixed. Like things that I typically wouldn't expect to be fixed for probably a couple years or so, just because like I have weird hardware and nobody's testing against my crap, but it's moving so fast, and like that was really exciting for me. So yeah, so that took the cake.
Yeah, it has a certain amount of simplicity to it.
Yeah,
refreshing.
I was trying Lubuntu too. I went down the rabbit hole of actually theming Lubuntu, because I get confused with Lubuntu because it's not as simple as other desktops, because you've got OpenBox, you've got certain themes that comes with Lubuntu. I was trying to figure out how all that works. Does the Qt have to have OpenBox to work? This is my question.
You need some sort of window manager, and OpenBox is the one we have. You could install Kwin, that would work. Or
I've done that before.
You could actually use any window manager at all. So even a tiling window manager like i3 or BSP WM. I mean, you throw whatever at it, Fluxbox, you name it, it'll work. Some are probably varying as far as features that you want. Nice thing about OpenBox is it's a floating window manager, so it ends up acting a lot more like your traditional desktop environment at that point. So,
True.
So
and that keeps it slim. That keeps it slim as well, slim and fast. Yeah, that's why you use that.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, the whole QT for me when you started it up was less than 400 megabytes running.
Yep.
It's also like stupid quick. Like it
is. It's blazing fast.
It's really, really quick.
Question for Dan.
Yeah.
With that, because you're almost, I don't, forgive me if I'm using the wrong terminology to describe it, but almost like the desktop is modular in that sense, because you have OpenBox and then okay, so is there, when it comes to theming, it can be tricky for that reason. Is that like a hurdle that you guys are looking to kind of make more of a cohesive experience, or is it like that comes with the shebang with Qt and that's almost like a selling point?
I think they have to be separate based on, you got your different silos, if you will. Yeah. And so they need to sort of remain separate. I guess they need some independence in the way they're configured. For the most part, though, you really aren't configuring a whole lot of the window manager itself, just like the title bars and stuff like that, right? I mean, that's really the only thing you're interacting with. And then maybe some of the other shortcut keys potentially, you might be messing with some of those, but for the most part, you're really just using the desktop environment, and those are the things you're theming. So you've got your Qt theming that you have to, and then like Plasma as well is the same deal. You have to have a separate theme for your GTK stuff. So you've got those two areas, and then your window manager, and those, once you get those figured out where those three things are, you've got it covered. Those are the three things you need to worry about for theming.
And one thing that Jinder mentioned was the backgrounds. Now, I didn't have that problem because you guys have sorted out the background issue, whereas you've got a selection of backgrounds now when you right-click and change background, which is great to see.
Yeah, the file picker now goes to the right place for where the backgrounds, where natively we store the backgrounds.
Was that because I mentioned that in that one Telegram post? I think I reported that. When I was testing out Ubuntu not too like months ago, I was like, hey, by the way, it's not pointing to this place, and that was always like a head scratcher. Because I always forget where is the backgrounds, like some people have it as wallpapers, some people have it as backgrounds and that kind of thing, so that's a nice little touch.
So one thing about that though is it will remember the last place you looked, so if you go looking somewhere else in your file system, you're gonna be in a different place at that point, but initially at least it starts in the right place.
I think I've mentioned it every video I've made on Ubuntu actually. And the other thing I want to mention is can you tick off the repaint the window when you're resizing? I'm not sure why that's not ticked on by default.
By default? Probably.
Yeah, so when you resize a window, it doesn't, it sort of has a black area, whereas it doesn't repaint
Probably because we don't enable PyCom or Compton. We don't enable that out of the box.
Oh, okay.
And that's actually one of the features that comes along with that. So that's the compositor piece. It does the window piece as you move it.
Right. Okay. There's always a reason, isn't there?
Yeah.
I am curious. So why OpenBox by default? So I do notice that OpenSUSE they use OpenBox by default for the LXQt as well. So is that an upstream thing?
Nope.
Or is it like, nope, it's not?
It is not. It's meant to be agnostic from that. So we use OpenBox, and we're going to have to change at some point when Wayland becomes more prevalent. And not all of LXQt is ready for Wayland yet. So we haven't had to jump yet. But when we do, we are going to have to pick a different window manager because OpenBox is not Wayland, set up for Wayland. And so KWin is a possibility, actually. It's probably one of the ones that is towards the top. But currently, when you use KWin, you bring in a lot of plasma stuff that we're not using and you wouldn't use. So you do kind of drag along some of those things. It does use more resources, not that we are necessarily pointed in the low resource direction, but right now we are, well, maybe even the lowest, one of the lowest as far as what is utilized for resources. So that fills a void, if you will, for systems.
Does Debian still have KWin?
They have their own version of KWin. They have a fork of KWin, and I don't know where it forked, but it was a way back. And so they have their own, but it is KWin.
Yeah, it's interesting that they forked it, because I know KWin could be super adaptable for like if you need it to be thin or light rather.
It can be.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what they would do to it.
The good thing with Deepin's KWin thing is that sometimes there are issues where like the default configuration for some KWin stuff, like especially if you like jump into games and you have some full screen stuff going, they don't expose some of the settings like in Plasma, how they would expose like KWin, like shutting down the compositor and restarting it during those times. Those aren't exposed in Deepin, but you can still toggle those by installing Plasma settings and configuring it. So it's a bit of a lifesaver, and it's kind of nice.
Yeah, so there's another fork of KWin though. It's KWin FT, and that's also a possibility, I suppose. Which is it's a little lighter. It's like you said, it's one of those that makes it a little bit lighter, and it's geared more towards Wayland. So maybe that's an option. I don't know. There's a lot of things that are still in development, and we haven't really landed on which direction we'll go, because there's even things like Wayfire, which is a possibility, I suppose, which is totally, a Wayland thing. And it's, if you've used Wayfire, it's a lot like OpenBox. So that might be the way that it ends up too. Not sure yet.
I can't speak for 2021, but I can say at least in 2019, when I swapped KWin out with OpenBox on OpenSUSE, it did use about an extra 100 megabytes of RAM. I don't know if that's more now or not. And also, I'm curious to know, do you know how the like KWin FT or the other one, how close they follow the upstream development? Are they just like, is it a divergent fork, or is it it comes back and
Yeah, I'm not sure. I do think they may bring in some of the things from upstream. But yeah, I'm not sure.
So I tried out Ubuntu also, and I have some thoughts. I really like the new theming, the way it's all flat now, including the icons, the background, the login screen. And I appreciate the little bird with the flashing light for the loading. I did have two issues. One of them is when you connect to Wi-Fi, if you select an access point, it doesn't prompt you for a password, or at least didn't for me. I don't know if that's a known issue.
I haven't noticed that. No, usually it asks me, I think. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm remembering wrong.
Okay. And I also switched out OpenBox for XFWM.
Okay, yeah, that's another option.
And just because it doesn't pull in too many dependencies. But the issue I've always run into with that is if I use Firefox and take out the title bar, it doesn't take it out. Now it does do it in like Ubuntu and other XFCE distros, but it won't do it in Ubuntu. I don't know if that's because of the mixing or what.
You have to restart the session for that.
I don't think it ever takes it out. Like
it did for me.
It did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Aris, did you also like have a different environment on at the same time?
What do you mean?
Like you had one machine, but you had two desktop environments at the same time?
No.
Oh, okay. Because I ran into the password issue when I was using Ubuntu or LSQT, and also another desktop environment, and it seemed like they were fighting over like the pop-up of the password issue too. So, but that was kind of user error. but yeah, it's just wondering.
We can't hear you, Eric, if you're talking. I don't know if you're talking to us.
I think he's talking
No,
to
he's not.
someone
He's
else.
talking to somebody else.
No.
Okay.
I will say, I know it's maybe a superficial, but these little things matter a lot. That background is so good. Like the way the colors are like
Thank
bright
you.
and vibrant, but like just it's good. They're flat, but they're not flat. Like they have depth. It's just really good. It's
design matters, man.
Yeah,
it really is good.
Thanks.
I'm just
I think
interested.
it's one of the best ones we've had. It's really good. It feels comforting. You know?
It does.
And the
I'm
color
just
scheme
interested,
too.
Dan, with
Mhm.
Ubuntu, is the memory usage a real critical thing still for Ubuntu moving forward, or?
Well, I mean, I think we strive to keep it as low as we possibly can, because that is, where we've been. But
Yep.
it's not something that we want to hold us back. If we need to move on to something that isn't that light, then we need to move on to something that isn't that
Yeah.
light, because that's the way it goes. But I think it is something we try to keep as much as possible.
So when you swap out like OpenBox for like a KWin FT or a Wayfire or whatever they are, does that affect the QT systems as much, or are they all sort of completely separate?
It shouldn't, or at least we
Okay.
hope it doesn't, right? And yeah.
Okay.
I wonder if there's going to be a future opportunity for like a bunch of users to migrate because I don't know what the latest deal is with Ubuntu and just the lead developer going to elementary, or the lead maintainer, I should say. I wonder if when the day comes that if Ubuntu does go by the wayside, I wonder if there'll be a migration to like Lubuntu. And would that call for a reimagining of like the default layout, like having a panel?
You mean like the panel at the top and stuff like that? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, well, Sean's still there. Sean's still doing Ubuntu as well as elementary things. He said he was going to do both. He wasn't going to go away from the Ubuntu project or XFCE. So even though he wanted to do some other things, so that's why he's started doing some of the elementary stuff. At least he said that in his blog post. But
he's brought some really nice things to the table as well. Like he's super capable, super talented.
But I guess that's an interesting concept, is to merge the projects together, merge the flavors together a little bit, or at least have some overlap. I won't say that we don't work together as flavors, but generally we don't do that we don't get that far into it as far as, those sorts of decisions, I don't think. And I mean, I guess even though, we don't have that as a default layout, it doesn't mean you can't make it your default layout if you want. Just like, if you go over to XFCE, you can put the panel there down at the bottom like we have it. I mean, there's nothing really stopping you there, I guess. So there's that too, I suppose.
Yeah, it really comes down to resources and the priority of like convenience. Because what made Mate so successful was that they kind of were always a little ahead of like anticipating demand or anticipating migration. I know with Unity coming to a close either just before or soon after, they offered the desktop layout switcher that made it like they kind of gave it like first class feel, where you just kind of switch and you switch and you switch, and they named it, they almost branded it. So it's like those kind of forward thinking, visionary, kind of like almost thinking as features on your desktop as a product can make a user like nurture that experience. And it's a powerful way of thinking about the desktop environment.
Yep, and that's one of the greatest things about Mate, right? They have that, and that's just it's super cool to, you can set it up any way you want with a couple of clicks of a button.
The tweet tool.
Yep.
To me, Mate and MX is like a step up from just a XFCE, a Mate distro. All the different little tools it include makes it a much better experience than just default desktop. Like for Mate, you got like the easily you can switch out your theme now, different colors. You have the boutique, you have the like they say the different panel placement. And MX has the other tools that they include and like the software application that they give you. So all these little tools, they really add to the different experience overall.
Yeah, and the convenience, like because Dan's point, you can do that on your own, but the fact that whoever is decided to push it forward and put it in front of the user. Like I think Mate was one of the first ones to do like a really polished welcome screen too. They just those kind of small things, like streamlining the convenience factor. It's almost like almost like when you're playing RPG games as like an amplifier. You have those experience points and then you take this potion and they just amplify. It's almost like that same concept of like when you're onboarding a first time user. And it's an interesting thing that, maybe desktops should think about a little bit more, especially in a time where like people are getting used to that's becoming the norm. But yeah, no, and also the other side of it too, and curious to get your thoughts on this, Dan, is what happens when you make or one of the angles could be for Ubuntu is like those super high-end production machines. I know Mike Tennell, I think, I don't know if he used Ubuntu this way or he used to, but he would just have a dedicated OBS machine and just it would be that kind of machine. It's almost like Ubuntu is great at making a workflow and a client feel because it's so stripped down. It's like with the age of like with Raspberry Pis and all these like edge devices, there's like almost opportunities there where like Ubuntu is like your go-to for being a sharpshooter of a desktop environment for those cases. That's kind of cool too.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. You can get all the resources that you need to do those heavy lift things, right? And and you can and you're right, it's simple, so you can keep it to do just those purpose-built things that you want, but you need a desktop for. So I mean, I totally agree with that. So you mentioned, so I'm going to go back to one other thing. You guys mentioned a lot of flexibility and the way the system starts and presents you options. One of the distros we didn't really talk about was Ubuntu Budgie, and they do that. They have a nice welcome screen, and they do some things out of the box, and plus they have all those applets too, and they've got the new window shuffler. They got a lot of things that give you that. Those are little tools like you mentioned, but they put them in front of the user and give them some flexibility. So that's another one that does that.
They took out Nautilus, and I think they gave you Nemo also instead.
Massive.
What's
massive
the reason
props
for
to
that?
Ubuntu Budgie.
I'm always curious why they switched out those things.
Because Nemo is a good file manager.
Yeah, flexibility, right? Yeah.
My guess
Nemo's really good for us people that are not so terminal savvy.
I'd say compatibility with the existing toolkits and theming and all of those assets, but increased general power user stuff without, being overwhelming. Nemo's just really, it's just a great file manager, and Nautilus. I personally, I like Nautilus, but like there are a lot of things that aren't too easy to do with it. Things that maybe aren't power user things. It's definitely one of the simpler file managers. So I think, especially with their focus on having this sort of like modern but semi-traditional desktop environment, and you see the work that they put into, like Dan mentioned, with the applets, like they create a lot of really cool features with, what is otherwise a fairly simple desktop environment. I think they do a good job at blending the two, and I think Nemo's a good fit in that regard.
Well, they've also got layout selections and also theming options, one-click theming options, which is pretty awesome as well.
And they've got a
done really
great
good
default
job.
set too. Like there's some really
Yeah.
pretty ones.
There are, yeah.
Yeah, and don't forget the browser ballot.
The browser ballot, yep.
What's that?
Well, you get to pick your browser.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That's the one that's in Ferrin OS. They I think they share that, I think, don't they?
Yeah, I think there's some similarities there. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
this
guess.
is interesting how people almost like you got to pick and choose your battles, and how that's what's so wonderful about the ecosystem. It's like you have different distributions that focus on different battles. I know when I first started using Linux, it was almost like always in the first 10 minutes, like, this is awesome, but why don't all these guys just get together and get one thing going? You learn like pretty fast, like that's a silly concept to some degree, because you're solving different problems, and it's the user base is like the needs are so different. It's like I'm grateful that people are divergent in that sense of like solving different problems, because you learn and you can share things along the way.
Yep,
for sure. So just to kind of get through the assessments of our explorations, were there any areas that people found difficult with any of the distributions that you explored? Yes, please.
I only
thought
had one issue at all. Oh wait, is Dan going? Go Dan. Dude.
No, go ahead.
Oh.
I was just going to make a simple comment. That's it.
Oh, okay. When I was installing Kubuntu, and I need to just double check and make sure my bug report actually got sent, because I tried to use the Ubuntu bug command, but it opened like two different windows. If I choose like a specific EFI partition, even if I like make sure the other ones are marked as not used, stuff like that, Kubuntu would always install to the existing ESP partitions that I explicitly like chose not to use. So that's the only issue I had, but I did file a report, so hopefully that gets fixed. But
did it pick the first one?
It did, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think I've heard that before.
I didn't personally have any issues myself. So Dan, you said you had something also that you want to maybe share?
I didn't have really any issues either. The Ubuntu was great. It was extremely simple to figure out without having to go read something somewhere on how to do it. I mean, all you had to do is point, click, poke around, test this, and if it was what you wanted, you found it. And it didn't take much time to get there. I kind of really liked it.
It's good.
It's good. Thanks, Dan. And if you ever did need to look it up, you can always go to our manual.ubuntu.me.
That is such a good thing to have. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's seriously underrated.
That's cool. Max, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to fire away in there. I don't want you to feel left out of the conversation.
Well, I didn't really get to do any distro testing this week, so not too much to add. Just the one thing on the Ubuntu discourse, the one thing back at least in the LXDE days, I found it really nice as a low distraction environment.
Yeah, agreed.
You know, when you're trying to get writing done, it's nice to not have anything to steal your focus.
That's why I left Kubuntu, or I'm sorry, Plasma. After a while, it's just I kept on tweaking. I'm on Pop! OS for my work machine, and even then I get the itch to tweak. And I'm like peeking around like, hey, Plasma is looking good again. You know, so I'm thinking about, wiping and using Plasma again. But yeah, I agree, like the minimalism of it is definitely a welcome thing for me in my brain.
With me, it's kind of like I really don't get it. When I get the itch to tweak, I look at the Steam library and I go, I want to play that $50 game I just purchased rather than tweak all this.
That's a good one. That's a good deterrent.
Huh.
And if there anything else any other thoughts about our experience and or why someone should give it a spin.
I did have an issue with main Ubuntu. After I installed it, I updated it, and then I took a picture, and then I pressed restart. And before it finished restarting, it halted. It just froze. I don't know if that was a kernel issue, because that was the next update that downloaded. So I'm not sure if that was fixed with the kernel.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
You got a picture, you said?
I took a screenshot of the desktop, and then I pressed restart, and it just froze.
I would say bug report that, John, but
I've had that happen before in installations or on a system where it just hung after reboot. They're typically older systems, though. They weren't newer systems. I don't know if that's
I remember 1604 days. They used to happen a lot with Ubuntu.
Shutting down is a surprisingly complex task. Like, you'd figure stuff would just go away, but like there's a lot of cleanup that has to happen, and
You
lot
mean
of
you guys
signals
just don't
that
press the
get
power
sent.
button?
Just
That is-
unplug it.
Press and hold. Press and hold. You guys
that
don't
is
do
a
that?
method.
I
That
like
is
it.
certainly a method.
I like it.
Have you ever, the sys requests? And actually, I'm not saying it right, but there's a key
The
combination
magic keys.
The magic
Oh,
keys,
yeah.
Those have never worked for me, ever.
Oh, well, and that's really locked up when it happens that way.
I didn't know they existed until I accidentally found out they existed. And apparently they can be changed. Or like you can compile with different
It depends on the
keys.
distro.
I don't remember what I was using, but they had done this, and I pressed a key combination that I am used to pressing, and something else happened, and everything was bad. And I didn't know that existed, the system request or the system thing, until that day, and I was like, wow, there's like kernel level hotkeys built in, which blew my mind. Like, what an incredible.
The order matters, believe it or not, and you don't want to reboot before you unmount and those sorts of things. So
yeah.
I'm amazed how sturdy systems are when you mistreat them by powering off incorrectly, or like if the power goes out and such. I'm amazed by how sturdy they are. I do notice that when you boot up, though, it takes a little bit longer, because obviously it's doing whatever
journal or something.
Yeah.
Whatever it didn't get to finish, it's grumbling at you, I'm sure, and doing what has to be done. But I'm still amazed.
I feel like an
there was
operating
a day
system
where that was not true. Yeah.
What's
Yeah,
that?
It's more resilient than Windows is.
Yeah.
There's power in a Windows update, you're really going to have some problems.
Yeah,
I think
I was
one of the
saying that, like, there was a day where that was not true, where if you did a hard reset on something, you were done.
Game over.
Those are the EXT 2 days, I think, was it when I had issues.
Oh yeah, no journaling.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
I feel like an operating system lives its entire life under constant stress, right? It's just like preparing for at any moment everything's going to explode, and it's like if something starts breaking, run for the exit and shut everything down. Like it really, there are so many systems built into the other systems that are meant to keep stuff from like being a cascade failure, and the importance of like your file system knowing like where it was and what was happening, like because even like one file being in a place where it doesn't know it should be, or not being in a place where it knows it could completely destroy your entire system, because if it doesn't have the ability to understand where or how or why something happened and it comes across it later, boom, game over. File system freaks out, the system can't process it, and you're done. Like, it's as simple as that, and it's mind-blowing how it can heal itself, and it can understand how to not die.
That is actually
ridiculous.
We do need to pause and think about that from time to time, like how much engineering has gone into the systems, and how resilient they are, and how talented they are of our misuse and abuse, and everything else. I mean, like, power outages, those do happen. The fact that it can sustain that, I mean, probably not over and over again, but if it happens every once in a while, it can kind of keep itself clean. Or like when processes just fail, how it can then restart those processes do some sort of a handoff all in the background without you even knowing. You just notice maybe a little more disk activity, or oh, why is it so slow? But yeah, so there's a lot of things to be really grateful for.
Can I sneak in one quick thing from an
Sure.
environment that we haven't spoken about? So Ubuntu Unity is remix is trying to be a thing. Want to know if you guys feel like, should we just throw a little shot of liquor on the street, RIP Unity, and let it be bygone and have those memories, or is it worth the resuscitation, resurrection that the Rudra is trying to do?
I think as long as somebody is wanting and willing to put in the work to create something like that, and people are willing to use it, like as long as you're not running into an issue where there's like, unmaintained security vulnerabilities, I think it's fine. I think there are many people who loved Unity, and it's not an easy task, but I think if they're willing, there's definitely going to be people who want it. So I think it's a great thing to have.
I totally agree. I think Linux, forgive me, this is a little bit hippy dippy, but I think Linux is an art. I think everything that you do when you program, you develop, you package, you desktop, whatever it is that you do, I think it's an art. And I think that if your passion, if your desire to do something satisfies a specific internal need of self-expression, I think that is absolutely, they should absolutely do it. And even if it's only for a couple of years, if it's for the rest of their life, whatever, I think it's an art. If it's an itch to scratch and it's a form of personal expression, then I absolutely believe it's absolutely, even if it's only one user that does it for themselves, it's still worth it. That's what I think.
That's a fair call.
All right. Well, we're rapidly running out of time, and we need to find another distro. We've had some suggestions already. There was one for MX that has just been released. I still want to do Pop, but I don't know if we should wait on Pop. If there's another release coming up soon, Chickle. Wait or go on that one.
Let's wait. I'd rather wait.
I'd say wait, honestly, because it's not out yet, but they're planning some really nice stuff.
Okay, so we'll wait on Pop because I'm really kind of chomping at the bit to try it, just personally. And then
you're gonna pop if you don't get to try Pop.
I am going to yes.
When you say there's another release, which release are you talking about? They've just released 2110, or they haven't released it yet?
They haven't released it. It's a beta.
Oh, okay. All right. I wasn't sure. That's why it hasn't come through on my desktop. I know somebody mentioned last week, Leo mentioned you can run a command to update it.
Yeah.
But I prefer probably to wait till it nags me, which it did last time as well. So I think I'll do that.
Yeah, Pop's real good at that.
If you want to update to the beta.
I'm already on the latest, so I'm just going to keep following the latest. Keep jumping.
A note of appreciation for something that Pop does, and that is a recovery partition. I really would love to see more distributions have recovery partitions as 100%. Like part of their default. That's a super cool thing to have.
I'm surprised more don't.
Yeah.
And especially when you're trying to hand off, like if you're supporting someone else in their Linux journey and you want to give them something and use, and not, in worst case scenario, they can use that as like to go back to scratch. Like that's.
Yeah. And it can be updated as well. So that recovery partition can be valid for like a release that comes out, and it's like, okay, I want my recovery partition to bring me to that level, not to bring me to, the last release or the release before that. So it's dynamic in that regard as well.
Maybe this is a crazy idea, but I'm kind of thinking, couldn't you sort of do that with Btrfs snapshots?
Oh yeah, you could.
Yeah, because I mean, a rollback feature that is actually like you could have like hard points where you hold it, for like, it's stable. You say this is a point,
It would actually be easier to implement that way, and it would be cheaper.
Some people not want to have the space. That wouldn't it take a little more, be more aggressive with the disk space if it
not
had to do that?
necessarily. It's really just about how you configure it. So snapshots take a lot of space when they're constantly happening and they're constantly iterating. But if you're doing this for like specific intervals of recovery, so if there's like if you can either set it manually, right? So like recovery partition, if you say update recovery partition, it could start from whatever point you chose to do it at, or you could have it set to where it only does it like every month and it doesn't keep old snapshots past a certain point. So it's really just about configuration, because currently a recovery partition has to be like basically a full operating system. So it already takes up space as it is.
I'm sorry for the distraction. Nate, you said you wanted to find a new distro.
I did. And I got distracted too because I started talking about snapshots, and then I got all excited. So I'm going to share another link in the about how you can at least in OpenSUSE you can actually tune your snapshots so you only keep however much you want. Although my method might be a little controversial for some people, but you can very easily tune that to only keep so many. You can actually make some important, but I just did tuning so I don't keep too many, because if something fails, I just roll back right away, and there you go. So anyway,
I was going to say, mate, I was going to say there's a release of Red Core, which is based on Gentoo. Don't know if anyone's interested in trying that.
I think that's very scary, but that could be fun.
I've tried it before. It's not that bad.
It shouldn't require compiling, I think, right?
No, it
doesn't. It's a binary distro.
Okay.
The only thing I remember, there were issues in the past about Sisyphus being slow, I think, as a package manager. But other than that, I think it was fine. I don't remember much about it.
Okay. I mean, I'm up for it. If people are interested, to me, this is just an exploration. I mean, I've never actually, I'm making a confession here to my friends, all you plus the however many.
Just us.
Just us. I have never run Gentoo ever, or anything, even a derivative. Yeah. So
not even a
really. Not even a derivative. Wow.
Well, I mean, I guess Chrome OS, I guess, if you want to count that, but I don't count that because I didn't install it.
Ah.
I have a funny feeling Biddle has done Red Core, but it's been years.
Yeah, it has been a long time.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to throw out there too, like if we want to get crazy, maybe we can earmark this for crazy Biddle. Nomad OS, which is like a BSD, but it's for persistent USBs. So it's meant to be run off a USB, and kind of like with Puppy, but it's based on BSD. And,
is it based on like NetBSD?
Not sure exactly which one.
I feel like NetBSD would be a perfect choice for that, just because of like their focus on like compatibility and portability with everything. That would be incredible.
Yeah, so I thought it was a cool looking project, and it kind of reminded me of the Puppy days where I had all these different puppies on my USB and my keychain. But yeah, Red Core or Nomad DS is like two suggestions.
I mean, Red Core I find interesting, I think, because Colin suggested it. And when Colin suggests things, it's usually interesting. He's never let me down.
I like how the icon is like a screaming gorilla. I don't really know. Like, do you see that? I don't know.
Oh yeah, I see that.
Yeah,
so I can't unsee it.
I'm not sure if that's what they were going for, but that's what.
Is that what it's supposed to be, or?
That's supposed to be the picture of the developers compiling stuff when they're just waiting to get so mad.
Well, it was the third time compiling, and it failed, and it was, and so he invested 24 hours of time and nearly burnt out his CPU. He had to actually re-thermal paste it because it was leaking out the side. It was working so hard. So that's what happened. I'm up for it. If anybody has anything else that they would prefer.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Okay.
I was totally paying attention. What are we going with?
Screaming
Red
gorilla.
Core. Screaming Gorilla OS.
Yeah,
Red Core.
Screaming Gorilla.
Screaming Gorilla OS. Based on BSD.
Right. I've just zoomed in on that and I still don't know what it is.
Good times. All right, so
it's
Red
like
Core
an atom. I think like the science logo things where there's rings around it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like I think it's a big octopus holding, or a big crab holding on to the red core or something like that.
Oh, it might be.
Mm.
Maybe. Man, abstract art is something else.
So it's only KDE? That looks like
I don't
it's only
know.
KDE? Okay.
Should be interesting to see what version they run.
KDE, yeah.
Could be fun. Thanks, Dan, for putting it in the chat so other people can play along at home.
Yeah, that was super handy.
Yeah. All right. Well, so red cord is. So I guess we are over time. So I guess we'll go around the horn for the last words. So Eris, last word.
Thank you very much for the show, and I just want to give a shout out to all the Ubuntu Flavors developers for their hard work. Their community distros that don't get enough respect or credit for all the work they do sometimes.
Totally agree, and I do appreciate you being here. It's been great having you. Colin, last word.
Oh, me already. Yep, I think the Ubuntu flavors are just coming along really nicely, and it's just getting harder and harder to pick a good distro because they're all so very good. So the Ubuntu flavors, all of them are not bad. Even the respins and all that, they're looking pretty good. So I think we're spoilt for choice these days, and it's a good thing. But anyway, having said that, it's always good to be here. Thanks, Nate, for hosting this, and Eric for helping out. It's always good to be here every week. So take care, everyone, and see you next week.
Super glad you're here. Thank you so much. I always enjoy your contributions, and I can't wait to see you next week and have you tell me about Red Core. It's Jinda.
Excellent.
Last word. Oh, you're muted. You're pulling a Nate. Still muted.
All right,
There we
maybe
go.
today I can get my sound actually working for once, right?
That's right.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for being here. Dan, last word.
Me?
Oh, yeah, you're next on the list. Sorry. Dan Kelly.
Okay.
Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly, please bring your notebook and tell us your last word.
Well, I don't need a notebook for this. Hey, thanks for donating your time so we can have a Saturday night evening together and share all our thoughts on Ubuntu and all the flavors that we've tried. Eric, thank you for helping out with the Zoom and all that stuff and putting us on good nights of show and tech. And I want to thank all the people at Ubuntu for all they do. Even though I use other OSs and stuff like that, I always have a machine around here that has a version of Ubuntu on it. And with that said, thanks to all the developers and people that help out.
Well, thanks again for being here. You always give a lot more detail than I do. So it's great. Peter, last word.
Cheers, y'all.
Cheers. Ubuntu works.
I got through an entire episode without mentioning Solus. Oh,
well, there we go.
So close.
Oh, almost had it. But I don't expect that. So there we go. Well, thanks for being here. Eric, the man who makes it happen.
That's a stretch. No, Nate, you're doing all this, man. All I can do is thank you for putting it together and giving us a place to come and hang out and talk and just share all of this fun Linux stuff. Like someone mentioned earlier, and it's a really good point. I always learn something new here. There's always like one website or one thing, one new app. There's always something. It's great to come back as a group to touch base and talk, because we all go out and do our own things and then come back and talk about it. So
yeah, for sure.
Look forward to doing it again next week. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks again. Shickle.
Oh, well.
Mr. Pop OS.
As always, it's a pleasure being here. I mean, a lot of respect to the people putting together Ubuntu and Lubuntu, Kubuntu, Ubuntu Chillin, Ubuntu Budgie, all the remixes. Oh my God, Ubuntu! I can't. There's just so many choices, and I love it. So, and it takes so much work to make all of them happen. I mean, I'm just thinking about the time that I take distro hopping, and I can't even imagine the time it takes to actually make that a reality. So massive amounts of respect for people making that happen. So thank you guys.
Well, I'm really glad I can be here and share expertise because you're one of those that you help everybody to learn something new because you know a lot. So thanks for being here. Dan, last word.
Well, thanks, Nate, for having the show and having all of us here and inviting us. Eris and Eric for your help. Appreciate it. Thanks to everyone that tested out Lubuntu this time. Appreciate your support and your feedback. It helps us grow and we take that and hope to develop further. So I think we've made some good progress this time around. We got some little bug fixes and people have started to notice some of those things, and I noticed some things that are coming down the pike too. So that'll be good when we get to unveil those as well. So yeah, I think it'll be good. Please make sure to check out Linux User Space on Monday. We talk Garuda. That's the distro we've been trying for the last month, and that was good. And you get to hear some history, even though it's been short. You'll get to hear about it, and you get to hear our take on it. So, yeah.
I have to say, I love the historical portion of the show. You guys do a lot of research. I don't know, like how long that takes you to put all that together. But
it takes as long as we test the distro.
I believe it.
So like a month.
Are you guys only every 2 weeks on Linux User Space?
So we are only every 2 weeks. And once a month we do a distro. The other show we do something topic based. So this one that lands Monday is Garuda, and then so Leo and I will drum up some topics, and then that'll be in the next show.
Okay.
I've mowed many a lawns listening to you and Leo. Just want
Awesome.
to say.
Well, thank you.
Well, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it because we did talk Ubuntu. You could answer a lot of questions for people, and that was it was phenomenal. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you.
Prophetic. Last word.
No, just shout out to Rocco and Zeb. Miss you guys. And thanks for Nate and Eric for continuing the great tradition. You guys doing a great job. And just like all this great talk, a great place we're in with Linux. It's a beautiful place to be. Instead of fighting everything to get it working, it's just a lot of just working fine and minor things here and there. But for the most part, it's a smooth ride. So it's a lot of fun. And I'm starting to get the itch to try Ubuntu some more. So thanks for all the work. Sure.
Well, thanks so much for being here. I don't care if you're late. If you can hop in for 5 minutes and say howdy and take off, that's cool too. So thanks so much for being here. I do appreciate it.
The dog ate my late pass. So
okay, I'm sure.
I'm gonna write that one down.
Max, last word.
Yeah, thanks to Nate and Eric for hosting and everyone else for showing up. I didn't get to try any of the Ubuntus this week, but hearing everyone's accounts, I'm pretty excited to play around with it now and downloading Red Core as we speak. Looking forward to trying that for next week.
Sweet. Awesome. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you decided to be a part of the show, as opposed to just in the chat. So again, I'll say you look a lot younger than I expected. You type like an old man, so whatever that's worth. Thomas, last word.
Who hath summoned the disembodied red triangle? Hello. Apparently, Linux does not like it when you have a USB video feed and you just connect the webcam while the video feed is being played. So I learned that the hard way. It's not picking up the webcam. So I'm a disembodied red triangle right now, apparently.
That works.
Yeah, I guess. At any rate, thanks for having Biddle yet again. I am hyped that it's so easy to get switched over to Pipewire. As soon as I get off here, I'm going to be testing it out and making sure Bluetooth works with it. Other than that, great job to all the devs who work on Ubuntu and all its flavors. Talking to you, Dan. So great job with the latest release. Looking forward to the next one. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. And with that, keep on Linuxing.
Well, thanks so much. And it's okay if you're disembodied triangle. It works for me. Now, Eris said something else you wanted to say, so please go ahead.
I just wanted to say, so for Red Core, they're not doing the download through HTTPS. So Firefox will complain about a security issue. So make sure to click on the little down arrow so you can look at the download, then hit next and then go allow download. It won't let you download it because it's not going through HTTPS. So just so you're aware.
That's good to know. So there we go. There is a workaround. All right. Well, thank you very much. You know, I do some things on a site called cubiclenate.com. I have some blatherings there if you're interested. I do share those from time to time. I'm also on a podcast called DLN Extend, and also Maker's Corner podcast. So if you want to hear more of my ramblings, there you go. If not, I don't blame you. But I want to thank all of you for joining on both Zoom and on the YouTube stream. Rocco, once again, for the Biddle community, for starting the Biddle community. Eric, also for the usage of a Zoom account, because it's really not possible otherwise. And everybody involved in making Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this great conversation with all my e-friends here, but also to have fun, enjoy technology, because Linux truly puts personal back in a personal computer. So until next time, see yous.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
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 Puppy Linux forever.